Welcome to Information Return Intelligence, the podcast that keeps you ahead of the curve on all things related to information forms, 1099s, 1042S, and related issues like W-9s. In fact, W-9s is what we're going to talk about today. My name is Jason Dinesen. I'm an enrolled agent. I've been a practicing tax professional for many years and have also been teaching for many years. And one of the things that I teach a lot on is 1099s. So that's what this podcast is for. It's a weekly podcast that keeps you updated on all things related to 1099s, etc., etc. And so today we're going to talk about the W-9 and a draft of the W-9 that the IRS put out in mid-September. Now, this is just a draft, so you don't need to change your systems or panic or do anything other than just be aware of this. By the way, I'm battling a little bit of a cold or something that I caught in some recent teaching travels where I was teaching on 1099. So if my voice gives out at any point, that's why. So this W-9 draft has two changes, one of which probably doesn't affect many people listening to or watching this. The other affects everyone. So the one that probably doesn't affect too many people in this audience is there's a new box relating to certain brokers of digital assets. And that's because of a new reporting form that's come out called a 1099-DA. And so, if you are a broker of digital assets, that affects you. Most of our listeners or viewers probably not affected by that. But the change that would affect you, and remember, this is just a draft, but if this happens, there would be a major change in the taxpayer identification number requirements for sole proprietors. So that proposed change is that sole proprietors would no longer be able to give an employer identification number on the W-9, only their social security number. This also would impact LLCs with one owner that are taxed by default as disregarded entities. They're taxed as sole proprietors. And I think that this proposed change is driven by all of the confusion around LLCs and how to fill out the W-9. So an LLC with one owner, and that owner is a human, is taxed by default as a sole proprietor, which means that human owner bears the tax responsibilities of everything associated with that LLC. So the 1099 should be issued to the human, not to the LLC, and you need the taxpayer identification number of that human who owns the LLC. Now, here's the thing. That's actually how it's always been. The W-9, and therefore the 1099 that you issue, should be in the name of that human that owns the LLC and in their taxpayer identification number. Now, right now, they can give you an EIN if it's in their name personally. They're not supposed to give you the LLC's EIN. That's in the instructions. How many times, though, have you been given a W-9 where you are being given the LLC's EIN? I bet it's happened many times. If you're involved in the W-9 collection process at all, I'm sure that happens over and over again. So under current rules, an individual, whether it's an LLC situation or it's just a sole proprietor with no entity, they can give you an EIN, that term employer identification number. You don't have to have employees to have one. Any one of us could go to the IRS website right now and get an EIN. in our name personally. And it's okay for an individual to give you an EIN on the W-9 as long as it's in their name personally. It's clear in the instructions that it's not supposed to be the LLC's EIN that's given to you. But again, a lot of times it probably is the LLC's EIN that you're getting. So the proposed draft would prohibit all sole proprietors, whether an LLC is involved or not, from using an EIN. They would have to give you their social security number. Now, this is just a draft, so don't change your systems yet. We don't know when or if the IRS will release it for real. They have January of 2026 printed on the form, but that doesn't necessarily mean anything. For example, the current version of the W-9 that's out there was released in March of 2024. That was in draft status for, many months, probably upwards of a year. And during that time it was in draft status, it had October of 2023 printed on it. So, January of 2026 is printed on the draft, but that doesn't necessarily mean that that's when it's going to be released. Now, when the IRS released that March of 2024 update, they never said anything about it. I stumbled across it by accident just checking the W-9 page on the IRS website one time. And in fact, we'll talk about that in a second. That page is a good thing to bookmark. And that page, they dropped the new PDF into it for the form, but they never put anything out saying, the form is new, use this new form. The website, the W-9 page on the IRS website, it has a recent updates section. It has always said no recent updates. It even said that in March and April of 2024. So, how would you know if this new version of the W-9 is ever released for real? Well, obviously, pay attention to this podcast. I have some preferred partners that I work with, such as IOFM, the Institute of Finance and Management. They're a good one to join. And, I work a lot with them. So IOFM, and I'll let you know. But otherwise, what can you do? Well, I recommend going to the W-9 page on the IRS website and just bookmarking it. And you don't rely, though, on that page to say that it's been updated. There's a link there to the PDF of the W-9, and once in a while, click on the PDF to see. So our current version is March of 2024. Click on that PDF every now and then and see if it's different. And, I don't think you need to do that every day or even every week, but once in a while, maybe put it on your calendar every so often. Just go out there and see. Is there a different version of the W-9? Don't rely on the IRS to publicize it because, again, they said nothing at all anywhere, not on the W-9 page on their website. They never said anything about it anywhere. Now, what happens if this form does get released? Do you need to re-solicit W-9s from your vendors? The answer is maybe. So with W-9s, they don't expire. So once you get a W-9 on file, theoretically, you could use it forever without needing to solicit a new form. The forms don't expire. And as long as you believe that the information on it is correct, you could keep using it. Now, that's a key statement there, though, as long as you think the information is correct. If you know that an individual sole proprietor is now no longer able to give an EIN, I believe you would need to pull all of the W-9s in your system, search for any individual sole proprietor who has given you an EIN on the W-9 and solicit a new W-9 from them because you know that something has changed in the rules and these people can't give you EINs anymore. That's what I think. Now, the IRS might come out with some guidance that says it's okay if there's an EIN and an old W-9, just, going forward, people can't use EINs. Maybe they'll say that, but I wouldn't count on that. So I would be prepared to run a report whenever this W-9 gets released for real. But to reiterate, this is just a draft, so don't do anything yet other than just be aware of it and be watching for this to be released for real. But sometimes the IRS puts drafts out there. They put their drafts it's a public area on their website. It's not a secret. So whenever they're working on any form, they put it out in the drafts. But sometimes things get put out in the drafts and then nothing ever happens. So I just wanted to bring this to your attention, though, so that you're prepared. You know that, okay, this is floating around out there. And if it actually gets released for real, then you're not surprised about it. Thanks so much for joining us on Information Return Intelligence. Join us again next time. We do this every week, a short little podcast on news and notes and information relating to 1099s, 1042S, and other related subjects. Thanks for joining us and have a great day.